Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. We got 250 people chatting in there right now about the Miami Heat. You should have FOMO at this point. You should definitely be checking that out. $2.99 per month. Bypass the Apple upcharge. Click on the link here in the description. It'll get you right through. Pay it. You get access to 10 channels and our stage shows. As we speak, they're setting up for a stage show at 2 o'clock. So this is content you can't get anywhere else. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. We've got a promotion this week. We've been doing so much trade deadline stuff that really haven't focused on the football game on Sunday. But we're going to be giving away $59 in promo funds to whoever has the best winning card for Sunday's game. But you have to be subbed to Prize Picks using the code 5 before that. So make sure that you do that. Go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5. Now, we have no music in this episode, so we're going to get right to it here because our guy Mercy has recut the intro, but we need to do a little work to it before it gets on. So we appreciate Mercy doing that for us. But we have not fully uploaded it yet. Of course, the old one had Jimmy Butler in there. We got to add Wiggs in there or something like that.
But I thought we were going to play it one more time.
You want to play it one more time?
I thought so. It's just going to be an abrupt ending like that, just like the Jimmy era. Wow.
Play it one more time.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right. Well, welcome back to Five on the Floor. We will have a new intro by the time that you hear another episode, or maybe we won't because we might need to do another one in an hour. All right. We're going to try to timestamp this one a little bit, though, because it's 1:46 on trade deadline Thursday. As we speak, we've got a group on playback. Soon we're going to have a group on Discord. By the time you hear this, that won't mean anything to you. But we're just telling you that things are breaking as they go. But Alex and I wanted to jump in here real quick to a very quick episode on the Heat's newest acquisition, just to get to it so that people who have not gotten a chance to get home from work maybe, who is Davion Mitchell? We're going to tell you a little bit about him. The Miami Heat are acquiring him from the Toronto Raptors as part of the bigger deal, which, by the way, at this point has not been announced because there are still some pieces that are being worked through. But, of course, if you didn't follow it yesterday, Jimmy Butler is being traded to the Golden State Warriors. That's the key thing here. Andrew Wiggins is coming back to the Miami Heat. We will do a full episode about Wiggins' fit. I think he's going to end up leading this team in minutes the rest of the way once he gets in. I think that's how valuable Spoelstra is going to find him. And we'll get into Wiggins specifically. Of course, the Heat are also getting a first-round pick, which is protected spots 1 through 10 for the next 2 years, and then becomes unprotected if it hasn't vested in the next 2 years. It becomes unprotected in 2027. Golden State, it looks like that pick probably will vest this year, but we'll see. Of course, this is a very strong draft. The Heat wanted to get into this draft. It's being described as a draft where you can get a lottery pick at 20. So if the Heat are somewhere in that 10 to 16 range, they should have a chance to get a good player based on their recent track record in the draft. But the other part of this trade that confused people, there were two parts. One is still being worked on, by the way. One is Kyle Anderson, known as Slow-Mo, who the Heat acquired in this trade, sort of. They were supposed to be moving him to Toronto, but according to reports, Toronto backed out of that part of the deal. So for right now, Kyle Anderson's still on the roster. That also put the Heat still above the tax. And I know people are going to say, the tax, we don't care about the tax. But then again, we start to get into the thresholds of the aprons and all this kind of stuff.
Above the first apron, by the way.
And above the first apron, exactly. And that means you cannot sign buyout players over a certain amount, among other things. So there are reasons to try to get under the first apron. They had accomplished that by trading Kyle Anderson, but now they still have Kyle Anderson. So the other part of this trade was the Heat were supposed to bring back PJ Tucker, at least for now. PJ was sent home because he hasn't been playing for the Clippers. He's wanted to come back. In fact, I kind of feel kind of bad for PJ. I know Heat fans don't because he chose to leave for Philadelphia a couple years ago, but PJ posted his Instagram video. He was all happy about it, all the rest of this. Well, he's not a member of the Heat anymore, according to the dynamics of this particular trade. In fact, he never was, I guess. Well, other than 2 years ago, not this time around, because he would be sent away to Toronto, which would buy him out, and the Heat would get Davion Mitchell. And if you're not familiar with him, this is a player we've talked about on the podcast from time to time over the past couple of years. This is a player that the Heat have had their eyes on. The eye-popping number here is, and I know you put up some of these numbers, our guy Matt Hannafin put up some of these numbers. The eye-popping number is he's in the 99.7 percentile in isolation perimeter defense. That's who he is. This is a defender. Now, he's gotten more reps as a ball handler this year, but this is the kind of player that Eric Spoelstra will use a lot. He's also a restricted free agent at the end of this season. He's on a very cheap contract right now, but they'll have a chance to evaluate him and whether or not they want to keep him. And of course, the guy they were using as their point of attack defender had been Drew Smith. He had emerged into that role, but he tore his Achilles. There's no way to know how he's going to come back from that. He's already had to come back from a torn ACL. So tell people a little bit about the player, Alex, that the Heat are getting and what his role might be.
I mean, you mentioned it. The guy is an all-world perimeter defender, and that's stuff that, I think Heat fans have been clamoring for a while. And you kind of mentioned it on Discord and on playback that they got younger, more athletic, and added defenders, kind of with this direction that Jimmy forced them into. And yeah, ideally, you wanted those things around Jimmy when they were trying to contend. But like the fact that, now like this is the team, right? There's still more to be done, as you said, but knowing what more or less what this team is going to be, right? Now that you got Wiggins, you got the pick, you needed more defense. Wiggins was a great addition there. But I think they needed another guy who guard the point of attack with Drew Smith out. It seemed like Larson was maybe going to start being that guy. He had a nice game last night, was actually able to rewatch it and actually pay attention this time because it was really hard to pay attention last night with everything going on. But like Davion Mitchell is going to play. Spo likes these types of players, and I think the guy, they've needed somebody like that, just a ball hawk on the defensive end, somebody who gets up into guys as far as, on the defensive end. That's exactly what they've been missing. Guys who will navigate a screen really well. Like not to start throwing out names, but there's certain people on the roster who maybe could do that better. And they've been needing just that skill set in general to make this team that they're currently fielding just much more competent, because we've been talking about it like throughout the season with Jimmy, without Jimmy, there hasn't really been an identity. They don't have the personnel, even though the offense, there was some growth early in the season and all that. And you saw some stuff, right? Like it's not a team that can lean into offense as their identity. And the defensive part of it was the identity throughout all these years, throughout the whole Pat Riley era. So kind of getting back to that with this trade, right? Where as of right now, as of the moment we're recording this at 1:52 p.m., it's Andrew Wiggins, it's Davion Mitchell, and it's Kyle Anderson. Those are three strong defenders. And Kyle Anderson is a rotation level player. He is much more playable than PJ was. And knowing that I was a guy who didn't want PJ to leave, after the Heat got that first seed and all that, like I didn't think that they should let him walk and all that in general. Knowing that, like Kyle Anderson is younger and, has been doing this for a while. And it's somebody that, Leif has pointed out for years that they've kind of coveted for a while. So even though they tried to move off of him to get under the luxury tax and, move Schroeder and a second round pick swap, as well as having wanted to move Anderson to get under the luxury tax, they're still probably going to try to make a move to do that by the deadline, I got to imagine. They got under the first apron at the very least with this Davion Mitchell trade. And that's a step up in itself. And you just got a lot better on the defensive end. You added three guys who can really help you on that end. I mentioned on our Discord server, when you look at those three guys, Davion Mitchell ranked in the 91st percentile in defensive estimated plus minus. Kyle Anderson was 88th percentile. Wiggins was 80th percentile. And our guy Drew Starr, who is so good during this time of year, aggregating stuff, has been putting out some stuff about Davion Mitchell and throughout the basketball index numbers, and pointing out that Davion Mitchell and Andrew Wiggins both rank in the top 10 in perimeter isolation defense, both rank in the top 10 in matchup difficulty on the defensive end. Like these are, guys that are going to help this team win now. They're going to go back to that grinded out identity, like that's what they're going to go back to. And when I say help them win now, I don't mean anything of significance.
Right.
It's more just like if they want to get back into the play and if they want to give a team, a hard time, they've got to go back into that identity. And I think they've kind of nudged themselves back into that here.
Well, and again, they haven't had Jimmy Butler lately. So now they are adding two guys in Wiggins and Mitchell. One's going to be a starter, and the other is going to be a rotation player, I believe. There are also two guys who are going to play down the stretch of games. I could see both of them closing with games they're leading. What's been the Heat's biggest problem this year? Blowing leads. They've coughed up leads at the end of games. Now, some of that has been turnovers, offensive inefficiency, disorganization, etc. Some of it has been the defense has collapsed. You're giving Spoelstra another option to play defensively. You also, provided that Haywood survives the dedeline here, you could
don't have
put
to play
out
so much zone anymore.
Well, you could put out a lineup at the end of the game that would include Mitchell, Highsmith, Bam, Ware, Wiggins. I mean, if you needed to, okay, it'd be hard to find offense in that group, but if you don't need offense, that's where you're at. Now, Mitchell is not an elite offensive player. He has decent assist to turnover numbers this year. He's shot 36% from three. He's not a guy you're counting on to play make, I don't think. Now, I view him, you look at what they've tried to capture in that spot the past couple of years, first with DeLon Wright and then with Drew Smith. Mitchell is more physical than DeLon. For sure. And he's a better athlete than Drew Smith. So I think you take those two things into consideration. They can still look at Drew Smith this offseason. Again, Mitchell's going to be an RFA, but they weren't able to keep DeLon last offseason. He had interest in coming back. They focused more on Caleb and then on Haywood. And now they've essentially replaced him. And this, to me, in the overall, and on the other side of the break, we'll get to kind of where this goes. It's going to be a short out. But this, to me, reflects kind of the direction that they want to take this thing. You mentioned it's defense, but it's also clear they want more functional size. That's something we've talked about a lot. They're getting more athletic, they're getting younger, they're getting longer. These are things that are very overdue for this roster. Now, fans are going to say, well, why didn't they do it when Jimmy was here? I understand that. But Jimmy forced their hand, and now they're going the right direction, in my view. Like, they've picked a direction not just in terms of age. Mitchell's 26. Wiggins is 29. He's not an old player, okay? I mean, Jimmy came at the same age. So you're talking about you're getting him on the front end of this. But they've picked guys, I think, that they want to build with, and we'll do bigger episodes on this. But what they've kind of put together is a team, I think, that's going to compete more the way that Spo wants it to. But they've kind of built a team that's going to be ready-made for a star whenever that star does become available. Like, I don't see I don't see a number one on this roster. I don't. But I think they've kind of built the infrastructure of the rest of the team now that if something was to go wrong in another place, Minnesota, or some of these others, or Luka with the Lakers, that they're building an infrastructure for that type of player. On the other side, Alex, let's get to what they will still need now. But I like the Mitchell acquisition. To me, under the circumstances, this raises the trade from a B- to a B+, because I didn't understand the Tucker part of it, but it's clear they had something else in the works here as they went forward. And again, they were able to adjust to the Kyle Anderson thing. We'll see what happens with that in the next hour. All right. Do you want to introduce, though, and we can play the music on this one, our sponsor? And now it's time for Who's on the Move, sponsored by our friends over at Cousins USA Moving and Storage, family owned and operated since 1996. They can service both residential and commercial moves, whether you're going across town, across the state, across country, and even across the globe. They have a 15,000 square foot private warehouse in Lauderhill, Broward County. The number one priority for Cousins Moving is transparency and being honest with their customers. They have a very low turnover, with most of their movers working for them for over 10 years. So find them online at Cousins Moving on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or visit the website at www.cousinsusa.com/5RSN. They've got an exclusive offer through 5RSN. You get 5 free wardrobe boxes with your next move, so there's no need to pack your clothes away in suitcases. Just mention 5 reasons. And now, who's on the move? All right, looking at the current roster now, and some of this may be moot in the next hour, so we got to look beyond that. What is this team missing, in your view?
Well, probably a more consistent scoring. because I think if you would have just like looked at it from the way that we looked at some of these guys before the season, specifically Terry and Jaime, I think those guys were expected to give you a lot more as far as scoring and being consistent there. Like, I was one who was telling people maybe, look at the odds for Jaime as sixth man of the year. Obviously, very wrong about that. I thought Terry and Tyler were more or less same level of player before the season. Extremely wrong about that. So those things have, turned around, and I think as of late, both of those guys have actually been playing a little bit better. So no, I'm not going to sit here and act like, hey, maybe they go back to the level that, some of us, including me, expected. But if you can just get those guys to be a little bit more stable there, right, where it's not so up and down, and so like I think there's something to be said about that, about getting Terry and Jaime kind of just resituated, finding the right roles for them. And I think there's been steps made there, like you guys have been talking about here on the pod with Terry and the
All right, we'll get back to you in a second, but I'm with you. They need scoring. But what they're doing is they're leaning in to defense, and I think the idea again is if they can keep teams down enough, and they can find roles for Jovic, Jaquez. We'll see again if Duncan's still here in an hour, but he's someone who catalyzes them in a lot of ways offensively. Here's where we'll close this as we go forward, because again, we want to get this posted and we want to get to some other stuff. They've added a starter. Wiggins is going to start. There's no question about that. Whether he starts at the 2, at the 3, I think ultimately he's a backcourt partner for Hero until they get a playmaker. But I don't think it matters, because I still think Duncan at the moment probably starts in that group with Ware and with Bam. Haywood moves to the bench probably with Jaquez, Jovic. I guess
Jaime.
Jovic is well, I said him. Jovic, Jaquez, Highsmith, and I guess for now Terry, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's going to be a case to be made if Terry's still here that Mitchell plays in his spot, and they have not had anybody else to play in that spot. We've talked about Drew and how he probably would have been getting those minutes. Totally different player than Terry. He does not give you the offensive pop that Terry is capable of giving to you, but Terry's not giving you the efficiency, although he's been a little bit better lately.
You can play them both. I think you can
Yeah.
play. They can both be in the 10-man
Yeah.
rotation. I just probably wouldn't play them with each other. I would have Davion Mitchell play next to Tyler, for example, or play next to Duncan more than I would have him play next to Terry. That's for sure. I think they've got a 10-man rotation. I think Kyle Anderson is no doubt a rotation level player if he ends up a part of this deal. At worst, look, I think fumbling the whole thing with Schroeder and a second round pick swap for PJ, which was a second apron move. I mean, I'm sorry, it was supposed to be a tax savings move. Like not getting under the tax. I think that wasn't a great look, but kind of turning around and sending PJ and a second for Davion Mitchell is a way to make up for it. I wouldn't have liked, like, if you would have told me before a day or two ago, like, hey, they're sending out 2 seconds and one of them, whatever, is a swap. It's not a big deal, but I wouldn't have loved that. I think they kind of have to, because like they got to make something out of nothing here. Like if they're not going to get under the tax, at least you get a playable player out of it in Davion Mitchell, somebody that they could use their skill set. So we'll see what happens. They might just dump another player, whether it's Kyle or I don't know. Like they're only $3 million above the tax now. Something might happen between now and then to get them under it by the deadline. They got under the first apron. They've got a defensive identity again. And now at the end of the season, it's either going to be they get out of the play-in and make the playoffs, right, and give some team a hard time in the first round, or maybe you end up with 2 lottery picks in this draft. So could be worse.
We'll have episodes about that too. We're going to talk about the draft with Adele and Matt. They're going to be on here as well. But we want to get this up. Want to get back to the live feeds that we've got now. But Mitchell, to me, it's a good addition. It's a player we've talked about a lot. They've liked him. They identified him. They went out and got him. And unlike when the Dallas deal broke, when they got Jimmy and they had to give away a first-round pick to the Clippers to make it work, they gave up a second. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, they unfortunately this has happened a lot of times in recent years. They had to give it up seconds to take care of things, but that's kind of what they use them for. They use them as currency in that way. Exactly. All right, Alex, appreciate it. We'll have more coverage later in the day as this thing wraps up. I wanted to get to this to you quickly, and a new theme song. I got to get with Mercy on that. Have a good